This is the Leo Clamaco Podcast.
Why do you think there's this huge cutoff from the ancient world to us? Why were they so spiritually and sometimes technologically more advanced?
They didn't have the distractions, number one. They knew themselves. I mean, imagine if you had just a really small community. Once again, it's the power of consensus creates reality.
Right.
I don't have any external anything. And if it's 50 of us and we all believe this thing, we're going to start doing miracles in our own little pod. Now what happens is another pod comes in and then challenges, can this be still enough? Once again, it's kind of like Christ on the cross died for what it believed in.
Right.
Would you be willing to stand for what you believed in? So then other cultures come in and they observe this as a test of an initiation. And like, okay, fine. And then it starts to normalize itself. So what happened over time, you go from, let's say, 10,000 people on the earth that could view something in a very specific way,
Right.
to 8 billion people that are all questioning
With
each other.
8 billion different views.
Yeah.
Got it.
Now we've got this very odd diversified entropy that's taking place that has nothing to do with our potential of creation. So for the world gets small again, which is why these extinction events happen, so that we can actually reset ourselves. It won't happen that way again because we'll remember this time. That's the
Right.
target, right?
Right.
But it then would recollect itself. We become miracle workers, and I can do all this amazing stuff, and then here you go again. That's the reason why it's different.
Terrence Howard.
Yes.
How much is he there, or what's real, what's not? How much do you actually put stock in it?
I'll say this. Terrence is definitely a polymath. Okay. He sees stuff in a way nobody can. He has had a lot of, and I'll say this for the listeners and watchers. So I know Terrence, pretty
Okay.
well. Yeah. Like about 2 years in talking with
That's
him.
awesome.
Yeah. And done a couple podcasts with him, things like that.
Very cool.
Yeah, great guy. And he's super tapped in. Super tapped in.
He seems extremely connected.
Yeah. He is, he's definitely there with a lot of stuff. And he is, like Walter Russell's work, he's reviving the shit out of it.
Yes, he is.
And Walter Russell, never really was seen a lot. I mean, he had his college, stuff like that. But he is creating a lot of magic in that space. The linchpin is a real thing. I've seen it fly. I've seen it do its thing.
Really?
It's actually a real deal thing, right?
Wow.
It needs to be industrialized.
Okay.
It needs some funding. So once that happens, I feel like some amazing things will take place off of it.
You don't think the government is already on it?
To fund it or get involved
Or
with
to build their own, or, no?
It's going to be hard. It'll be hard to build what he built. You have to have like a little bit of an esoteric reach and faith to go there. And the practicalness of where the government wants to go with it, I think it'll be a challenge. He's presented it to them and whatnot, so we'll see what comes out of it. I don't know.
For those who don't know, can you break it down exactly what that is exactly?
The linchpin?
Yes.
So the linchpin is a tangential flying machine that Terrence built using the geometry of the proton and the geometry of hydrogen. And so what he did is he took the flower of life, he broke the flower of life apart, and he created this geometry that could extend out into a three-dimensional structure that created a flying apparatus called the linchpin, right? He could create other things from that.
Right.
But essentially that the curved shape of what he calls the tetrahedron, when you stack those things together in a very specific way, it'll actually create this these dimensional polygons.
Which look really cool.
Yeah, they're super cool.
Yeah.
Super cool. And then when he put that together and then he put rotators into it, it started to fly. And he's like, well, then could it go this way and this way? And then he started playing around with simulations. And then he realized that he could build this like crazy bonding machine that they just snap together. And like all of a sudden he could have this mass plane that's like picking up structures and flying things left and right and back and forth for very limited cost. Like it wouldn't really cost anything to produce this.
Wow.
Yeah. And it can even, there's aspects of his technology that I've seen that can process like hydrogen fuel sources and stuff like that. So he could pull, stuff out of the air and keep it moving, especially once it gets in outer space.
I was watching his, he did 2 podcasts with Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the first one, he was talking about the periodic table.
Yeah.
and it reminds me of how you describe the map of consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's fluid. It's not, right? It's not static. It's not something that one falls into the other and they all connect in a curvature way.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's so absolutely. I mean, the periodic table, the way that he broke it down. I mean, have you gone pretty deep in Walter Russell's work on that?
Not as deep as I want to.
Yeah. So basically, Walter Russell.
But I have a top level understanding.
He states that everything happens in tones and octaves. Okay. And that the universe was created off of initial, which is why God spoke. So the speaking, the tone that took place of whatever that emission was, created all of this possibility. And then what happened is it started to accelerate itself out. And then you have, they've gotten down to like 10 octaves. Okay. And each side of one of those octaves, okay, there are 7 different positions that roll inside of those octaves. Once again, the number 7, the 7 hermetic principles, because you have, it goes from like negative, it goes from 0, 1, 2, 3. Yeah. So it goes from like -3, 2, 1, and then to 0, negative, and then it goes to positive. And this is the inhale and exhale. So it's just like our breath. It does this thing in each one of the octaves, right? And then you have this middle point that goes to 0.
Okay.
That's called bisexual energy. That you've probably heard Terrence talk. He mentioned it, and it was like, what the fuck is he talking about bisexual? Because it's the meeting point of the positives and negatives coming together, or the masculine and feminine coming together inside of that. And what they've proven, and like what's interesting about Walter Russell is he won awards and I believe the Nobel Prize for this.
He won Nobel Prize
for identifying, using the same structure of periodicity to outline where elements were coming next, and even elements we can't see.
Wow.
Because there's octaves. I think we sit in the 3rd octave. So there's octaves 1 and 2 that we can't see. So hydrogen kind of starts at this 3rd octave, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have shit in front of me right now. I need a Jamie to go like, hey, get this thing and pop up a deal.
Yes.
But I believe it starts in the 3rd octave, which once again, where we start to recognize ourselves is in the 3rd dimension, right?
Wow.
I mean, you look at these kind of correlations.
It all connects.
It's nuts. And then you have these 7 different versions that end up emitting themselves. And then that's what forms like these crystal structures. And I can get into that, like sodium and, NaCl, like come together. They are like the -2 and the +2 in 2 different octaves that come together. So they're bringing the octaves together to combine themselves into a crystalline structure, right? All of the different crystals that we see in life are basically 2 different elements that have combined themselves from 2 different octaves to bring those 2 worlds together.
Wow.
Right? We are that as well. So there's stuff inside of us, like in our DNA and the way that we function, that does the exact same thing, that creates these crystal structures, these unbreakable bonds.
It's just mind-boggling.
It's really nuts.
It really is.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so hard to grasp that that's what we're made of,
Yeah, yeah. And so we're like a walking crystal structure that's very pliable, but at the baseline of what we're made of, it's all of that. So, you were talking about the periodic table, how I then go through the process of breaking down, the Hawking scale of consciousness. It's kind of the same flow. That's
same
there.
idea. Yes.
Yeah. And then he has, Walter Russell has a thing called the cosmic clock, which essentially is like how all this stuff moves through like the cycles of time. So then you can like look at it through time of this is going into the 4th dimension of how all of the periodicity starts to expand itself through those different areas of this thing called the cosmic clock. For those of you who want to research it, that's a whole rabbit hole right there. We don't have time to discuss.
It is a whole rabbit hole. No, it really is.